The three biggest reasons only 10% of students study abroad: they're afraid of being homesick, they don't think it's safe, and the number one reason people don't study abroad is cost. We're here to dispel all that, find out exactly how that 10% crafted their study abroad journey, and how you can too. I'm Chris Carlton, and this is the Study Abroadcast. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Study Abroadcast. I am here with Brad Vanden Elzen, who is the Director of the Office of International Education at UW-Stevens Point. Brad, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Chris. Really excited to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. So, just getting right into it here, tell us a little bit about your background and study abroad experience. Where did you go? When did you go? How long did you go? All that stuff. Tell us about your journey. Sure. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I grew up in a family that was pretty mobile, and so I was accustomed to traveling quite often as a child. And my first trip was when I was 16. I went with a school group, and we backpacked around England and France and Switzerland. And certainly that was a remarkable experience, and it was a heck of a lot of fun and got me interested and excited about traveling sort of a bit more independently than away from with my family. While I was an undergraduate, I kind of made the typical mistake. My parents and I kind of split the expenses of my study, and to be honest, I worked a ton of hours, and I couldn't quite figure out how I could incorporate study abroad into my experience, and so I didn't, unfortunately. I did have the opportunity to visit some friends who were away during their junior year in both France and Germany, and again, it just sort of whet my appetite, but it didn't quite fit into my particular program of study. And so my solution to that after I graduated was to spend a year as a foreign expert at a Chinese university. And so I taught at a university in Changsha in the south central part of the country, and certainly that was really the experience that set me on my path. When I returned to the U.S., I did a master's in TESOL, and then I taught English as a second language for a number of years at schools around the country. And then I knew that I wanted to be involved with educational administration, so I went on for a PhD at Ohio State University in educational policy and leadership, and that led me to back to Wisconsin and this opportunity. So I've been here at Stevens Point for 13 years. Most of that has been focused on international student and scholar services, but within the last 2 years, I've also taken on responsibility for study abroad. So a nice steep learning curve these last couple of years.
Yeah, nice. Don't you mean the Ohio State University?
Indeed, I do. Yes, we are told that we're supposed to say that, but I always get picked on when I do, so I generally leave the definite article off. But certainly, yes, the Ohio State University.
Okay, and then you may have said this, but I didn't know. How long were you in China for?
I was in China for just over a year.
A year, that's right.
Yep.
That's a long time to be there.
It was quite a while, and it was the early 90s, so it was a very different China than China is now.
Oh my God, yeah.
But it was just an absolutely remarkable experience. I was, to be frank, I was completely spoiled. I mean, there was a great hunger at that time for English language instruction, and so my colleagues, there were three of us on campus, and I were kind of rock stars in our small city of 10 million people, and there were only 30 foreigners in town at that time, and so we stood out a bit and got a lot of attention, but we were also really well taken care of. And I've had the good fortune to return to China, many dozens of times since, and it's been fascinating to watch that country change as it's moved through development.
Did you go anywhere else in Asia when you were there?
During that time, my travels were in mainland China, but I've since, I think I'm up to 52 countries around the globe. Most of those are in Asia, so I've done a fair amount of travel in the course of my work, and also.
Okay, and wow, yeah, I wish I could go to China for a year. And then you landed at Stevens Point. You said you've been at Stevens Point for about 12 years. And tell me what makes UW-SP or UW-Stevens Point unique in terms of its study abroad program and just the campus in general.
Sure. Well, a couple of things that stood out to me when I was looking for opportunities, for jobs, basically. I had always worked and studied at major R1 or Research One universities, and so I did my undergraduate at Madison, which was again a fantastic experience, and my master's down in Oklahoma, and then my PhD at Ohio State. And while I liked the R1 setting, I really kind of thought of my desire was to be at a place where I would be interacting with students every day and hopefully get to know my students. And so when I got here, the international student population on campus was about 110. And over time, we've grown that number up into 200, a little bit over 200, and it's since settled back down in the 150 range. But, I really do know all of my students, at least on the international side. And for most of them these days, I've actually met them and their families in their home country and encouraged them to take a look at this place. And so I'm part of a really dynamic community. On the study abroad side, what's really cool about this place, something like 55% of our students here at Stevens Point are first generation college goers. And so coming to college for many of them and for their families is a really big deal. And to be a part of that is really exciting and rewarding, but then to help them sort of broaden their horizons and contemplate the notion of getting out someplace else in the world, and then seeing them do that and seeing the results of that is intensely satisfying, and it's just a whole lot of fun. I mean, this is I tell folks it's a hopeful enterprise that we're engaged in, and we see it every day. So really being in an environment where I have a great team of folks that I work with, but also having the chance to spend time with students nearly every day is just a really good balance for me.
I didn't know that many were first-time college goers. And no. I was just gonna say.
Go ahead.
So far that I've talked to people at different schools and advisors, every school has something a little different that they do. Does Stevens Point do anything in terms of scholarships or grants or financial assistance for its students studying abroad?
Well, indeed we do. And I should go back. I missed one of my key points on this. One of the things that really attracted me to this place was that for a school of this type, a comprehensive university of about 9,000, the fact that we were intentional as a campus as early as the late 60s about not only sending students abroad. Our first program went in 1969, but also bringing international students in. Here in a small town in the middle of Wisconsin, that was something that really stood out, and at the time was unusual for comprehensives. Others have gone that direction now more recently, but it's still kind of a hallmark of this place that we're very intentional about internationalizing. In terms of supporting our students, most of our programming we run ourselves, and our goal there is to keep it accessible and open. And so something like 20% of our undergraduates do study abroad during their program of study. And again, that makes us very unusual for our institutional type. And we attribute that to our range of programs and the accessibility. Of course, we have financial aid, through federal financial aid for those 4 credit programs. But we also have a sizable amount of money in our foundation that's been earmarked specifically for study abroad. And so we've got a variety of awards that we provide for our students, again, to help reduce those barriers to entry.
Okay. Yeah, that's 20%. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's actually kind of remarkable.
Yeah.
So, it's great.
And so of the 80%, the ones who don't study abroad, what do you tell them if they're trying to get them to come over to the side of study abroad when they're on the fence about it? What advice do you give a student in that instance?
Yeah, one of the key things points I try to drive home is, at least for most of us, there aren't very many times in life where we can afford to give up a couple of months or a semester or even an academic year, and sort of step out of our normal routine. And I think that becomes increasingly challenging for most folks once they're in their working years. And so, this is an opportunity to that probably is not going to come back around for most of us. And so we try to encourage students to think about how they can broaden their personal portfolio, and certainly study abroad is a great opportunity to do that.
Okay. And so just getting a little bit more into just getting to know you,
Sure.
Do you have any book or media recommendations that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a political junkie, and so I really like Charles Pierce. He's the head of the politics area for Esquire magazine, and he not only writes for Esquire almost every day on sort of current events, but he's got a number of books that I've enjoyed over the years, and so I like his style. And in terms of political punditry, also sort of my guilty pleasure is another writer, a blogger. He refers to himself as the Rude Pundit, and he. It's pretty intense, and he's pretty, I'd say, uses very strong language, to put it mildly, but he's also really funny and I think quite insightful. So those are some guilty pleasures for me, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what if so? Being in China, and then I know you've been to other places too, but is there any food that you really miss that you wish you could just walk down the street and get that you can't today?
I think one of the great joys of my work and has been the chance to basically eat everything everywhere. I don't know that I don't know that I could have done my job without a willingness to sort of give everything a try. But I will say that I always find something to like every place I go. But there is a particular restaurant far in North India in the foothills of the Himalayas. It's called Rokeby Manor, and it's attached to a beautiful little hotel. And they've got a curry there that is okra based. That, I mean, I think about it and I get goosebumps. It's so incredibly amazing and tasty. And so when I have the chance to get up to that part of the world, I always go there and try to spend a couple of days and basically order it for every meal because that's how much I love it. So I would definitely, near Mussoorie in India is a great place for that curry.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. I'll definitely try to find a link to the website if they have one.
I'm sure they do.
Okay, all right.
And it's a beautiful setting. And I mean, you wake up in the morning and you kind of turn around and there are the snow-capped Himalayas, and they're great walking trails, and it's just a delightful place in the world.
Okay, and if you walk into a bar, what'll you have?
I'm a beer guy, to be honest. I like a good solid IPA, so usually what I'll do wherever I am is I'll ask the bartender or someone, what's their recommendation for a good local beer. But if that's not available, I'll default to some sort of an IPA. Okay. So pretty simple.
Yeah, me too. I like IPAs too. And so now we've got the food and we've got the drink. If you could have dinner with one living person, who would it be and why?
There's a biologist and neuroscientist at Stanford whose name is Robert Sapolsky, and a long time ago he wrote a book called The Trouble with Testosterone, and it was a series of essays on human development and sort of the challenges that we face. And he's since written a number of books that have followed, and he's just the perspective that he offers and sort of how cleanly he writes and the humor he brings to it, I find fascinating. So I don't know that I would necessarily be able to hang with him intellectually, but I'd like to certainly try. And so sitting down with him over a meal and sort of picking his brain a bit would be fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's always mixing in comedy with intellectual material. I think is it's a talent that very few people can do.
Right.
And anytime I see that, I try to pay attention a little. And now, finally, do you have a favorite quote you want to leave us with?
Sure. So Mayakovsky was a poet in the early Soviet years in Russia, and one of the things that he wrote is, "Life is good, and to live is good." And I think that sort of encapsulates, my approach with students in particular is, get out there, have some experiences. None of us knows where those experiences are necessarily going to take us, but we won't regret having done them. And so I embrace that philosophy.
Good. Yeah, right. And do you have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, I think study abroad has such a great potential to broaden folks' horizons, and to be a part of it is just a joy every day.
Yeah, well put, Brad.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being here. Guys, give us an honest review of the show in the comments. Let me know what you think on social media. Just check the website and you can see how to connect with me, or you can send me an email. Brad, thanks again for being here, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You bet. Thank you so much.